This story is titled, My Girlfriend Left Me After Rich Man Told Her I Wasn't Her Level. Now returns full of regret begging for forgiveness. Hey everyone, I'm a 31-year-old guy who's lived in Phoenix my entire life. I've been holding on to this story for months, and I finally feel ready to share it with all of you. It's about my ex-girlfriend Sophie and how everything we built together over a decade fell apart. Our story started back in high school. Let me take you there because to understand how everything ended, you need to know how it all began. It was sophomore year when we first met. Sophie wasn't like the other girls in our grade. She wasn't one of those loud, attention-seeking types that seem to dominate the social scene. She was more of the quiet, keep-to-herself kind of person. But when you got her talking, she would light up like nothing else. It was like she had a million dreams in her head, all trying to spill out at once. Dreams about working in publishing, wanting to live in Chicago, working with books, maybe even writing her own someday. I was completely hooked from the first moment I saw that sparkle in her eyes. As for me back then, I wasn't what you'd call ambitious. I wasn't failing my classes or anything like that, but I just didn't have my life planned out the way Sophie did. One thing I was always good at, though, was fixing things. If something broke in woodworking class, I'd be the one the teacher called over. If a friend's parents needed help with their garage door, I'd be there with my tools ready. It just came naturally to me. I always knew how to fix what was broken, whether it was a jammed cabinet or a faulty electrical outlet. By junior year, something clicked in my brain. I realized I could turn my knack for fixing things into actual money. While other kids were worrying about prom or stressing about college applications, I started setting up my own HVAC business. It was small at first, just me, my dad's old tools, and a couple of regulars who trusted me to fix their air conditioning. But it was mine, and I had something real going before I even had my diploma. By senior year, Sophie and I were inseparable. We went to prom together, watched every horror movie we could find in my parents' garage, and spent countless hours talking about our futures. We just clicked in a way that I can't even explain. She was my first everything, first kiss, first love, first real heartbreak too. But I'll get to that part later. Sophie got into this prestigious university in Chicago, and I couldn't have been prouder of her. I still remember the day she got her acceptance letter. She ran over to my house at dawn, waving that envelope like it was some golden ticket to Willy Wonka's chocolate factory. I hugged her so tight I thought I might break her. That was Sophie, though. Always aiming high, always pushing herself to be better. When she left for school, I didn't see it as the end for us. I saw it as our next big step together. I kept working on my HVAC business, which by then was doing pretty well. Nothing super glamorous, but steady money was coming in. I figured if she was chasing her dreams, the least I could do was make sure she didn't have to worry about money. I started helping with her rent, sent her cash for books, and even put together care packages during finals week. I would drive 6 hours to her dorm just to spend weekends together. It wasn't easy, but I didn't mind. She was my girl, and I wanted to make her life easier, let her focus on school without financial stress. Looking back now, there were times when it felt unbalanced, like I was putting in more effort than she was. Sophie was always busy with classes, internships, networking events, and I understood all that. But sometimes I'd call or text, and it felt like I was interrupting something more important. She'd always say things like, "Sorry, just been so swamped," or "We'll talk later, okay?" Later didn't always come. But when we were together in person, it was like no time had passed at all. I would visit her at school, and we'd spend hours just walking around campus or sitting in her tiny apartment, talking about everything and nothing. Those were the moments that kept me going through the long stretches apart. After graduation, Sophie landed a job at this well-known publishing house. It wasn't her dream position yet. She wasn't editing bestsellers or writing her own books, but it was a solid start. She was excited about it, and I was excited for her. I thought we'd made it through the hard part, and it was time to build our future together. By then, my HVAC business was doing better than ever. I had expanded the operation and hired a couple of guys to help with the workload. I was even thinking about opening a second location. I was genuinely proud of what I'd built. Maybe it wasn't the kind of job with fancy titles or a corner office, but it was mine. Sophie used to joke about it, calling me the CEO of air conditioning. I loved that she could see the humor in it while still respecting what I'd accomplished. For a while, things were really good between us. I kept supporting her the way I always had. If she needed help with anything, I would send her money without hesitation. When she had big projects at work, I would show up with her favorite Thai food so she wouldn't have to cook. On weekends, we'd take little trips or just hang out at her place, binge watching whatever show we were into. It wasn't perfect. No relationship is. But it worked for us. Then I started noticing signs that things weren't as solid as I thought. Her work began taking over everything. She loved what she was doing, but it was like she was always trying to prove something. To her boss, to her coworkers, maybe even to herself. I would try to get her to slow down, take a break sometimes, but she'd just say, "You don't get it. In this industry, you have to hustle." I tried to be understanding, but it felt like we were growing apart. I didn't want to admit it, though. I figured every couple goes through rough patches, and we'd get through ours too. After all, we'd been together since we were kids. If anyone could make it work, it had to be us. That's what I thought anyway, before Kate showed up and changed everything. Kate was one of Sophie's coworkers. At first, she seemed pretty cool. Sophie would mention her here and there, saying stuff like, "Kate's jealous of how supportive you are," or "Kate thinks it's sweet that you bring me lunch when I'm busy." I didn't think much of it at first. It's normal for people to talk about relationships at work, right? But Kate wasn't just talking. She was planting seeds of doubt in Sophie's mind. The first time I noticed something was off was when Sophie mentioned this casual conversation they had at lunch. Apparently, Kate had said, "You're so lucky your boyfriend supports you chasing your dreams. Most guys would feel threatened by a woman with ambition." It sounds like a compliment, right? But then Sophie added, "She asked if you ever hold money over my head." I laughed it off at the time because it was ridiculous. I had never once made Sophie feel like she owed me anything. I always encouraged her to focus on herself and let me worry about the bills. I could tell it stuck in Sophie's mind, though. She started insisting on paying for little things. Coffee, gas money when we'd go on trips. It wasn't a big deal in itself, but I felt like something was shifting between us, like some invisible wall was being constructed one brick at a time. Then came all the criticisms. Kate was always finding something wrong with my actions, no matter how thoughtful or kind they were. One day, I brought Sophie her favorite sushi because she mentioned skipping lunch to finish some work project. She texted me later thanking me, but added, "Kate said it was sweet, but she thought it was weird you didn't ask what I wanted first." I was confused as hell. I had brought her exact order from her favorite spot. Why would I need to ask? Another time, we went for dinner, celebrating Sophie's first promotion. We were having a great time until she suddenly said, "Kate thinks you should have let me pick the place. She says you always take control of stuff like that." I had picked that restaurant specifically because Sophie had been wanting to try it for months. But suddenly, even doing something nice could be twisted into a flaw. Kate didn't stop at just criticizing my gestures. She had plenty to say about my job, too. One night I was fixing Sophie's AC unit, and she casually mentioned, "Kate asked what you do for work today. When I told her you own an HVAC business, she said, 'Oh, that's cute.'" Cute? Running your own successful business isn't cute. I had built it from nothing. But that wasn't even the worst part. Sophie added, "She asked if you ever wished you did something more polished, like in an office or something." That one really stung. I knew I wasn't some corporate executive in a tailored suit, but I had always been proud of my work. Sophie tried to smooth it over by saying, "Kate's just blunt sometimes. Don't take it personally." But I could see Kate's words seeping into Sophie's thoughts. She started making these little comments like, "Ever think about expanding into something bigger?" Or, "Have you thought about taking business classes?" On the surface, they seemed innocent, like she was just interested in my career growth, but paired with everything Kate had been saying, they felt loaded with judgment. It wasn't just the comments, though. Kate had this way of inserting herself into our lives, even when I wasn't around. Like this work event where everyone brought their partners. I couldn't make it because of an emergency call. A regular client's whole AC system went down during a heat wave, and I couldn't just leave them sweating in 110-degree heat. When Sophie mentioned why I wasn't there, Kate said, "See, that's the thing with guys like him. Their work always comes first." Sophie claimed she defended me, but the seed was planted. Later she asked, "Do you think you'll always have to handle emergencies? What happens when we have kids someday?" Kate's poison wasn't just in what she said. It was how she framed herself. Always the wise friend who knew better. Anytime Sophie and I had a disagreement, Kate would swoop in with her opinions. If I forgot to text Sophie back right away because I was under someone's house fixing their heating, Kate would say, "That's a red flag. Communication is so important." If I planned any kind of surprise for Sophie, Kate would ask her, "Don't you wish he'd ask for your input more?" It was like she couldn't stand seeing us happy. One of the most obvious moments was when I helped Sophie move into her new apartment. I spent the whole weekend hauling furniture, assembling shelves, and fixing up little things around the place. Sophie thanked me, but then added, "Kate said it's great that you're so handy, but she thinks it's weird you didn't hire movers. She said it's not worth risking your back over some boxes." Who criticizes someone for helping their girlfriend move? It was becoming clearer by the day that Kate had some kind of agenda. What really got to me was how Sophie started questioning everything, us especially. She'd say things like, "Do you think we're too different?" Or, "Kate says relationships like ours only work for so long." I would always reassure her and remind her of everything we'd built together over the years. But the more I tried holding us together, the more Kate seemed to pull us apart. I couldn't believe how much power Kate had over our relationship. I didn't want to believe someone could be so intentionally destructive, especially to a friend. But Kate wasn't just some opinionated coworker. She was a snake in the grass. And I didn't realize how bad it was until it was too late. Then came the big night. I had it all planned out perfectly. That night was supposed to be the beginning of a new chapter for me and Sophie, the woman I thought I'd spend my life with. Instead, it was the night everything fell apart. We'd been dating for almost 10 years, since high school. Through all the ups and downs, I had never doubted what we had. So I decided it was time for the next step. I thought it would make Sophie feel secure, especially after all the insecurities she'd been having lately. I bought the ring a month before. It wasn't just flashy or over the top. It was thoughtful. I had it custom designed with both our birthstones, forming a heart in the center, with small diamonds framing it. I even left room to add stones later, for when we had kids. I made a custom ring box too, with 2 buttons. One that lit up yes, and another for no. It was cheesy, sure, but it felt like us. I wanted her to see how much thought I'd put into our future. That night, I picked her up for dinner at this cozy Mediterranean place she'd mentioned wanting to try. I reserved a quiet table in the corner, the perfect spot for a proposal. I had rehearsed what I was going to say like 100 times in my head. The night started fine. She looked beautiful, wearing this emerald dress that matched the color of her eyes. We talked about her work and my business. For a while, it felt like old times. But something was off. She was quieter than usual, distracted, like her mind was somewhere else entirely. Halfway through the meal, I reached for the small box in my pocket. My palms were sweaty, and my heart was pounding like crazy. I was about to pull it out when she cleared her throat and said, "I need to talk to you about something." I froze with my hand still in my pocket. "Sure," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. She looked down at her plate, not at me. "I've been thinking a lot about us lately, and I think we need to take a break." I sat there completely stunned. "A break? Where is this coming from?" She finally looked up, her eyes already watery. "I don't know if this is working anymore. I feel like we've been drifting apart. I need time to figure out what I want." She hesitated before adding, "Kate says we're mismatched. She thinks I'm holding myself back." Her words hit me like a punch to the chest. For a moment, I couldn't even speak. This was the woman I'd spent half my life with. The woman I was planning to propose to right there that night. And now she's saying she doesn't know if she wants me anymore because of what Kate thinks? I took a deep breath, pulled the box out of my pocket, and didn't open it. I just held it in my hand and looked right at her. "Do you see this?" I said, my voice somehow staying calm, but firm. Her eyes went wide when she realized what it was. "Is that—" "Yeah," I said. "This is the ring I was going to give you tonight. I was going to ask you to marry me, Sophie, to spend the rest of your life with me." She started to say something, but I held up my hand to stop her. "No, let me finish. I have spent years supporting you, believing in you, building a future for us, and this is how you repay me? By blindsiding me with some vague break crap over dinner? Thank God you showed your true colors before we got into anything more serious." Her face just crumpled. I could see tears streaming down her cheeks, but I didn't care anymore. I stood up, tucked the box back in my pocket, grabbed my jacket, and looked her dead in the eyes. "You want a break? Fine. But don't come crawling back when you realize what you've lost." Then I turned and walked out, leaving her sitting there at the table. The drive home was a complete blur. My mind was racing, flipping through every moment we'd shared, wondering where it went wrong. How could she do this to me? After everything I'd done for her, everything we'd been through. I kept telling myself I'd done the right thing by walking away, by standing my ground. I had given her everything I had. If that wasn't enough for her, then that was her loss. I wasn't going to beg or chase after her. I knew my worth, and I wasn't about to settle for someone who couldn't see it. When I got home, I left the ring on the counter. Not as a reminder of her, but of what I deserved. A partner who appreciated me, who believed in me, who wouldn't throw everything away on a whim because of some toxic coworker's opinion. I decided to distract myself like everyone does these days by mindlessly scrolling through social media. Big mistake. I opened Instagram, expecting the usual flood of memes and food pics. Instead, the first thing I saw was Kate's story. She'd posted a video of some party. At first, it seemed harmless, just people drinking, dancing, and laughing. But then I saw her. There was Sophie, draped over some random guy. She was clearly hammered. He had his arm around her waist, pulling her close, like they were anything but strangers. She was giggling, leaning into him, in a way that made my stomach turn. I froze, staring at my screen, hoping I'd imagined it. But no, it was definitely her. Then I noticed something else. I'd been tagged in the story. Kate didn't make it public. She used that sneaky Instagram feature where only the tagged person knows they've been tagged. It was like she wanted to make sure I saw it without letting anyone else know. For a moment, I just sat there stunned, unable to believe what I was seeing. This was the same woman who told me just hours earlier that she needed a break to figure out what she wanted. And now she's grinding on some random guy like the ink on her breakup speech wasn't even dry. I felt a wave of anger so strong it made my hands shake. It wasn't just about the guy or the party. It was the fact that Kate of all people was behind this. The same Kate who spent months tearing me down, planting doubts in Sophie's head, criticizing everything I did. Now she was posting this garbage for me to see. It was calculated and cruel in a way I couldn't wrap my head around. I didn't even know what to do with myself. I closed Instagram and put my phone down, just sitting there staring at the wall. Part of me wanted to call Sophie right then and there to demand an explanation, but I stopped myself. She'd made her choice, and now I was seeing exactly what that choice looked like. A few hours later, my phone lit up with her name. I ignored it at first, but she kept calling. 3 times, 4 times, 5 times in a row. Finally, I picked up, more out of curiosity than anything else. "Hello," I said, keeping my voice ice cold. "Babe, please let me explain." I could hear her sobbing through the phone, panic clear in her voice. I didn't say anything, just let her talk. "I didn't know Kate would post that," she cried. "It was a mistake. It meant nothing." I let out a bitter laugh. "A mistake? You hooked up with some random guy right after breaking up with me. That's not a mistake, Sophie. That's a choice. A very deliberate choice." "It wasn't like that," she pleaded. "I was drunk, and Kate introduced me to him. I didn't even know what was happening until..." "Until what?" I cut her off. "Until Kate decided to document it for the world to see? You expect me to believe you didn't know what you were doing?" "She manipulated me," Sophie said, her voice breaking. Hearing her try to shift the blame just made me angrier. "You want to blame Kate now? Fine. But you're the one who let this happen. You're the one who decided the best way to figure out what you want was to wrap yourself around some stranger. That's on you, Sophie, not Kate." There was silence on the other end of the line. For a moment, I thought she'd hung up, but then I heard her sniffle. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I was stupid and I interrupted her again. "Don't apologize. You don't get to cry and say you're sorry when you clearly knew what you were doing. You made your bed. Now lie in it." She started to say something else, but I didn't care anymore. I hung up, then blocked her number. I wasn't in the mood to hear excuses. Every time I thought about her voice, the way she tried to twist things and make herself the victim, I felt sick. I couldn't even be mad at the guy in Kate's story. He didn't owe me anything. But Sophie? She was supposed to be my partner, my ride or die. Seeing her act like our relationship meant nothing was the final nail in the coffin. The next morning, I woke up to a flood of texts and missed calls, all from our mutual friends. I guess Sophie had told them what happened, or maybe Kate's story had made the rounds. Either way, I wasn't in the mood to explain myself to anyone. I sent a blanket message to my close friends, just letting them know I was fine but needed some space. It wasn't my job to manage anyone's opinions about the situation. I was completely drained and just wanted to focus on moving forward. I keep replaying everything in my head, wondering if I was too harsh with Sophie. But at the same time, I can't ignore how deliberate it all felt. Sophie let Kate plant these ideas in her head, let her interfere in our relationship, and then turned around and acted like she was powerless in the situation. And Kate? How do people like her even exist? Who goes out of their way to blow up someone else's life just for fun? I don't know what her angle was, but she succeeded in destroying what Sophie and I had built over a decade. I don't know what my next step is. Part of me feels like cutting them both out completely is the only way to protect my sanity. But am I wrong for being this cold? Or is this just what happens when people show you who they really are? Between work, sorting through my feelings about Sophie, and some unexpected health issues that came up, I'll get to that later, I've been stretched pretty thin lately. But I'm finally ready to tell you what happened next. In the weeks after our breakup, Sophie tried to reconnect multiple times. She would send these long texts apologizing, saying she didn't know what she was thinking, asking if we could meet up and talk things through. I ignored her at first, but she kept pushing. Eventually, I sent her a short response. Sophie, I've already said everything I needed to. You made your choice. I'm moving on. Please respect that. I thought that should have been the end of it, but it wasn't. She'd pop up out of nowhere, liking old pictures on Instagram, trying to leave comments like "miss this day." I didn't respond to any of it. I had already wasted enough energy on someone who didn't value me, and I wasn't about to give her the satisfaction of knowing she still had access to my life. Now here's where things take an unexpected turn. About 2 weeks ago, I started feeling off, just tired all the time, with these weird dizzy spells that wouldn't go away. I chalked it up to stress from everything with Sophie and Kate, but when I almost passed out at work while on a ladder, I figured it was time to get checked out. Long story short, I needed surgery. It wasn't anything super serious or life-threatening, but it still wasn't fun to deal with on top of everything else. I wasn't exactly thrilled about it, but my friends and family were supportive. My guys at work even took extra shifts so I wouldn't have to stress about the business while recovering. The surgery itself went fine. I woke up groggy, but okay. I was still coming out of anesthesia when I noticed someone sitting by my hospital bed. At first, I thought it was a friend or family member, but nope, it was Kate. Let me set the scene for you. I'm lying there in one of those awful hospital gowns, barely able to keep my eyes open, and Kate is sitting there like she's my caretaker or something. She had this concerned look on her face, like we were best friends, and she'd been worried sick about me. "Oh my God, I'm so glad you're okay," she said, leaning forward like we were some kind of cute couple. I was too out of it to fully process what was happening, but I managed to croak out, "What are you doing here?" She gave me this soft smile. "I heard you were in the hospital. I just had to make sure you were all right." Had to? Kate? The same Kate who spent months trying to sabotage my relationship? Yeah, okay. She kept talking, saying things like, "I feel so bad about everything with Sophie. You didn't deserve that. You're such a good guy." She didn't know what she had. It was like she was trying to rewrite history, painting herself as the supportive friend who'd always been in my corner. At one point, she even reached out to hold my hand. I didn't pull away, mostly because I was too tired to argue, but I could feel the gears turning in her head. Kate wasn't there out of concern. She was there because she saw an opportunity. As I lay there half-conscious, everything started to click. Kate had been scheming from the start. All those little comments she made to Sophie, the constant criticisms of me, the way she inserted herself into our relationship. It was all part of some twisted plan. And now with Sophie out of the picture, she was trying to slide her way into my life. It's funny how clear things become when you're stuck in a hospital bed with nothing else to do but think. Kate wasn't just a bad friend or a toxic coworker. She was manipulative, calculated, and selfish. She didn't care about me or Sophie. She only cared about getting what she wanted, no matter who she had to hurt along the way. Here's the thing about people like Kate. They think they're smarter than everyone else. They think they can manipulate and scheme their way into whatever they want without anyone catching on. But she underestimated me. I decided right then and there that I had a plan for Kate. I'm not going to say too much about it right now because I want to make sure it plays out exactly how I envision it. Just know that once I fully recovered, she was going to learn what it feels like to be outplayed. She might regret ever stepping foot into that hospital room. After I got discharged from the hospital, I started feeling better physically. But Kate didn't waste any time. She texted me almost every day, starting with these super casual, just checking in messages. Stuff like, "Hey, hope you're feeling okay," or "Let me know if you need anything, I'm here for you." At first, I ignored her. I mean, I wasn't stupid. I knew what she was doing. But after a while, I realized that playing along might actually work in my favor. So I started replying. Not too much, just enough to keep her on the hook. "Thanks for checking in. I'm doing all right. Appreciate it. Recovery's been slow, but getting there. Kate ate it up. Her texts got longer and more personal, filled with things like, "You're such a strong person," and "I don't know how Sophie ever let you go." She started dropping little hints about how she'd always thought I deserved better, and how much she admired me. At one point, she even sent a picture of a casserole she'd made, saying, "I'd love to bring this over if you're up for company." I declined, obviously, but it was clear she was trying to warm her way in. The real shift happened about 2 weeks after I got out of the hospital. Kate called me out of nowhere, saying she'd just been thinking about me and wanted to hear my voice. I could practically hear her laying it on thick, talking about how worried she'd been during my surgery and how she'd prayed for me. "Thanks, Kate," I said, keeping my tone neutral. "That means a lot." Then she hit me with, "I feel like this whole thing has brought us closer, you know? Like it's made me realize how much I care about you." I almost laughed. She didn't care about me, she cared about winning. But instead of shutting her down, I leaned into it. "Yeah, I guess it has," I said. That one sentence was all it took. Kate went full throttle after that, texting me constantly, calling me babe in messages, even suggesting we hang out sometime soon. The thing about Kate is that she's predictable. She thought she was being slick, but everything she did just made her intentions clearer. This wasn't about me, it was about her ego. She wanted to prove she could get me, just like she'd tried to ruin what I had with Sophie. So I let her think she was winning. I started texting her back more often, dropping compliments here and there, even agreeing to meet up. At that point, I knew she thought she had me wrapped around her finger. When we finally hung out, Kate was all over me. She kept touching my arm, laughing at every little thing I said, dropping hints about how much she valued honesty and loyalty in a relationship. It was honestly exhausting to watch her try so hard, but I played along with her game. Eventually, one thing led to another, and yeah, we hooked up. I'm not proud of it, but it was part of the plan. The next morning, I didn't text her back. Or the day after that. Or the day after that. Kate, of course, started blowing up my phone. "Hey, is everything okay? Did I do something wrong? Can we talk?" She called me at least a dozen times, left voicemails, even sent messages on Instagram. By the end of the week, I had a collection of frantic texts and missed calls from her, all begging me to give her a chance. That's when I made my move. I took screenshots of every single text she sent, along with a few of the voicemails where she was practically sobbing about how much she cared about me. Then I sent them to Sophie in one big batch. No explanation, no message, just screenshots. Once they were delivered, I blocked them both on everything. I know some might think, "Dude, that's harsh." But hear me out. Kate had been playing games with my life for months, tearing apart my relationship, manipulating everyone around her. By sending those screenshots to Sophie, I wasn't trying to get her back or start drama. I just wanted the truth to come out. Sophie needed to see who Kate really was, how far she was willing to go to get what she wanted. I wanted Sophie to see what she'd thrown our relationship away for. And honestly, blocking Kate felt incredible. It felt like I was in control again, like I wasn't just reacting to the chaos she caused. Now I'm sitting back and watching the fallout. Kate wanted control, but instead I turned the tables. Sophie and Kate might have their own reckoning to deal with now, but I'm done playing their games. Let me tell you what happened next. Apparently, my little move, sending all of Kate's frantic messages to Sophie, set off a chain reaction that I couldn't have planned better if I tried. Here's what I heard through the grapevine. Sophie didn't take kindly to finding out that Kate, her supposed friend, had been scheming behind her back. She confronted Kate at work, and things went from 0 to 100 real quick. From what I've been told, it started with Sophie demanding an explanation, asking Kate why she tried to sabotage our relationship and then swoop in after the breakup like some kind of vulture. Kate, being Kate, tried to play innocent. She claimed I was the one pursuing her and said Sophie was overreacting. But Sophie wasn't buying it anymore. She had the receipts right in front of her. Someone who works with them told me the argument got so loud that their manager had to step in. But that didn't stop them. Sophie called Kate out in front of all their coworkers, accusing her of being manipulative and trying to ruin her life for her own selfish reasons. Kate fired back, and before anyone could stop them, things got physical. I don't have all the details, but I know it ended with both of them being escorted out of the building by security. The aftermath? They were both fired. Honestly, I don't feel bad for either of them. Kate got exactly what she deserved, and Sophie? Well, I can't say she's completely innocent in all this either. She let Kate worm her way into our relationship. By the time she realized how toxic Kate was, the damage was already done. I don't know what's next for them, but I'm staying far, far away from the drama. I'm finally in a place where I can breathe again without feeling that constant weight on my chest. But wait, the story's not over yet. A week after the fallout at their job, Sophie showed up at my door. She looked like a complete mess. Her eyes were puffy from crying, her hair thrown up in a lazy bun like she didn't even bother trying to look put together. She just stood there on my doorstep, looking broken and defeated. "Kate planted all those doubts," she said, her voice shaking. "She made me think you weren't good enough. But it was all her. I see that now. Please, let's fix this." I just stood there, letting her talk. I wasn't angry anymore. I was just done with the whole situation. When she finally stopped, I told her, "Sophie, I gave you everything, and you threw it away. You let someone like Kate tear us apart, and now you want to come back? I can't do this anymore. I've moved on," she begged. She even cried, but I didn't budge. I wished her the best and closed the door, feeling more certain than ever that I was making the right choice. The very next day, as if on cue, Kate tried her luck. She sent me this long text first, from a random account I didn't recognize, saying how sorry she was, how she'd made mistakes, but was willing to do whatever it took to make things right. I ignored it, of course. So she showed up uninvited, all smiles and fake sweetness. "I know I messed up," she started, trying to look remorseful. "But I know you care about me. We could make this work. I see that now." I didn't even let her finish. I looked her dead in the eye and said, "You both made your choices. Now live with them." Then I walked back inside and shut the door in her face. That was the last time I saw either of them. Since then, life has been peaceful. My business is thriving. I've even expanded it and hired more people. I've been spending more time with friends and focusing on myself, which has been long overdue. And yeah, I've started dating someone new. She's amazing, down-to-earth kind. And most importantly, she actually appreciates me for who I am. She doesn't care that I run an HVAC business instead of sitting behind some fancy desk in a corporate office. She's supportive, honest, and makes me feel like I'm enough, exactly as I am. As for Sophie and Kate, last I heard, they're both still jobless and blaming each other for everything. Mutual friends say they barely speak now, and when they do, it's just to throw insults at each other. I would be lying if I said I wasn't a little amused by the irony. They destroyed each other trying to come after me, and I walked away without a scratch. If I've learned anything from all this, it's that you have to pay attention to the people you let into your life. Not just your partner, but their friends too. Sometimes, the wrong influences can do more damage than you realize. And for anyone who's been through something similar, find someone who values you for who you are, not for who they think you should be. Don't settle for someone who listens to people like Kate or lets doubts creep in because of someone else's opinion. You deserve better than that. Life's good now, and I plan to keep it that way. Here's to better days ahead.